I hate main characters. Main characters suck, okay? The side characters are almost always better than the main characters. And in fact, I was in the middle of working on a script for a long analysis video talking about why I hate main characters, and I decided, you know what? If I made that general sweeping video, well, I wouldn't be able to go ahead and do something that I think YouTube desperately needs. Opinions. That's right. We're living in a terrifying landscape where everyone's too afraid by their own shadow to say anything or piss anybody off. But there's great news. I actually like pissing people off. Hell yeah, gamers. Welcome to Noob versus Pro versus God, a new series that I'm kickstarting on my channel with the target of this video being anime protagonists. In case it's not self-explanatory enough, I am going to be talking about these three categories. Noob, essentially boring ass main characters. Pro, good main characters, but not necessarily la creme de la creme, S tier. And then there's God tier, anime protagonists as it sounds. Pretty straightforward stuff. There are many reasons why I'm doing this video, partially because it's a really fun format. Also because I get to roast a lot of people's favorite things, and then they get upset, and then they try to cancel me on Twitter because of it, and try to make irrelevant straw man arguments as to why I'm evil. But I'm gonna be striking y'all down with facts and logic. I hope you're ready, because you should definitely like and subscribe, as well as let me know future shiz you want me to make in the Noob versus Pro versus God format. I think it's beautiful. I'm excited to talk about Noob versus Pro versus God YouTubers. That won't get me in trouble at all. In the meantime, when it comes to Noob protagonists, it doesn't necessarily mean that the protagonist is terrible. It just means that it just barely does everything required of him. And essentially, there are many different categories of Noob protagonists. I wanted to start strong by insulting probably one of the most iconic anime characters of all time, Goku, because I hate to say it, but he definitely falls into the Noob category. He's a normie. He's boring. Why is it that every protagonist needs to be so bland that they can't have intricate goals and philosophies or ideologies? They have to be the most dumbed down version of whatever they are in their world. Like, for example, Goku or Naruto or Asta, they all fall into the same slump. A bunch of characters that are good characters, because I genuinely like Naruto and Asta, unlike Goku, but they definitely fall into the Noob category because they're inspiring to the people around them. They want to be the best that they could be, and I hate to say it, but that's boring. Other examples of boring protagonists in the same way are like Natsu from Fairy Tail. Look, I am one of the few people on YouTube that actually likes Fairy Tail openly, but Natsu, oh god, just kill me now. The dude has the personality of a toaster. I don't understand. Why do all the protagonists have to be so boring? Now, I want to talk about other protagonists that fall into the Noob category briefly, just so you don't think that these are the only ones that I'm mentioning. One of my least favorite protagonists of popular shonen is Deku from My Hero Academia, and everyone likes to hate me for this, which of course I appreciate greatly. Thank you all. Thank you. I love when you guys hate me like this. All my masochistic bones are fully erect and ready to tussle. But this category is the moral Jesus category. Obviously, there's overlap between my different categories in the grand Noob group, but the moral Jesus category is a category I hate because I don't like looking at a person that's perfect on a moral standpoint, that will never go and do something purely because he wants to do it, that will never let his personal aspirations and dreams clash with the noble thing that he is doing. I hate those people so much. They're not realistic. I don't relate to them. I am an asshole. I am not going to start relating to the absolute pinnacle of morality. The only thing I'm hoping for is that Deku gets nailed to a cross sooner or later. I think that that would be a sick ending of My Hero Academia. But the fact of that happening is extraordinarily unlikely. Now, other characters that fall into this subgroup of Noob protagonists, Jonathan Joestar from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1. The main reason why I think Part 1 is the weakest part in JoJo's is because Jonathan is by far the most boring JoJo. Compared to the pizzazz of Joseph, the stoic badassery of Jotaro, the insane rambunctiousness of Josuke, and the suave confidence of Giorno, Jonathan sucks. He's just a nice dude. Why is he a nice dude? Because that's what he is. He likes to beat up bad guys and save the women, and it's just, I don't even root for him. I was literally rooting against him every single fight he got into. He's the most boring character in his entire story arc, aside from his girlfriend. But let's not talk about women and shonen. But we'll do shonen women, Noob versus Pro versus God maybe in the future if you like this one. But I'm gonna definitely get trouble for that one. But what I'm trying to say is Jonathan Joestar is just an upstanding gentleman that does the right thing at the right time all the time, and that's boring. And that's also why I hate Shiro Emiya from Fate Stay Night. He's also a Noob protagonist. protagonist. Bro, Shiro is the worst part of Fate Stay Night. Fate Zero is a masterpiece. Kiritsugu's amazing. Maybe we'll talk about him soon. Wink, wink. But Fate Stay Night, for those of you that are not caught up with the lore, don't worry. I'm not gonna be spoiling anything. Me spoil? No, never. My biggest complaint is that Shiro is a master. And in Fate Stay Night, every master summons a servant to fight on their behalf. So Shiro summons a servant who happens to be a woman, immediately becoming his waifu. And he becomes a huge simp. And then, whenever his servant is about to take damage, Shiro selflessly sacrifices himself, jumping in the way. Oh, I can't let you be hurt. Oh my god, you piece of trash. That's exactly what you summoned her for. God. Shiro's way weaker, yet he goes to sacrifice himself selflessly all the time. And he ends up ruining things for his team very often because they can't afford to lose the master. That's ridiculous. But no, he'll do the selfless thing. He'll push forward and eventually get really stupid hack superpowers in middle of the story because he wants to be a hero fighting for justice. It's stupid. I hate Shiro. Tanjiro's also a moral Jesus of a protagonist. God. Demon Slayer's a great story. It looks beautiful. I like a lot about it. But Tanjiro wants to save his sister, and everything he does is to save his sister. He doesn't even get caught up in the difficulties of the world he inhabits. Why? Because he ends up relating to every single demon right before he kills them. We get to see their tragic backstory, and he selflessly kills them in a peaceful way where they could be at rest. God damn it, man. Blow a fuse. Why have to be so nice all the time? Man, I wish your earrings were like Nazi symbols or something. That would make you a better character. And also Ichigo from Bleach, I guess he'd also fall in this category. Now, I like Ichigo a lot more than Shiro, Deku, Tanjiro, Jonathan, etc. But I do still think he falls into the noob category of protagonist because the story of his life is so centered on saving a different person that requires his assistance to the point that I don't relate to him at all. Yes, he has a lot of badass scenes. Yes, he struggles with his hollow thingy, and that's probably the best part of his character. But the driving factor for every single story arc is him selflessly throwing himself into the pit of hell to save the people around him. I don't like people that selflessly throw themselves in the pit of hell to save people around them, okay? I wouldn't do it, and neither should every protagonist. Protagonists are just boring. I way prefer selfish assholes. Selfish assholes get me, man. Anywho, another little subcategory of noob protagonists, since I'm already making every enemy on the planet, I might as well go ahead and do this. Self-insert protagonists. Now, I hate self-insert protagonists for a very simple reason. They want every single viewer to be able to insert themselves into the protagonist. So they work their absolute hardest to dumb down the character as much as they possibly can. Because if the character has no personality, well, then it doesn't conflict with the viewer's personality. And the viewer could just be like, oh my god, every single one of this character's personality traits matches mine exactly. Which is why we're gonna be playing a bit of a game for the next little category. I'm gonna name a protagonist, and you're gonna tell me in what way you don't want to be him. First, we have Kirito from Sword Art Online. What's his personality? I would say his personality is cool, heroic. That's his whole personality, ladies and gentlemen. He also gets whammin'. He's also overpowered. He also saves the day. He also lives his dream. That puts Kirito into the noob slot. Issei from High School DxD gets the whammin'.
I may not be a chef, but I'm about to stuff me this turkey.
Is overpowered. That's his whole personality. Moving on. Do you see where I'm going with this? Characters like Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I understand you may not exactly want his hairdo. And if that is the case, that's an extremely weak mindset. His hairdo will forever get you laid. It is the ultimate to get laid hairstyle. It works 83% of the time. And I say that from personal experience. But he wins the fights. He has all the clout. The women love him. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Senku from Dr. Stone. Now, he's more interesting just because the world of Dr. Stone forces him to be more interesting, but where IQ is basically the battle system, he's an overpowered protagonist. Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see what I'm trying to say here? The self-insert slot for protagonists doesn't make an interesting character. It is the most bargain basement cheap trick of a character that you can actually get people to love. And then, of course, the final little category of noob protagonists, the pussies. I don't know why there's this massive draw to create an absolute bitch of a protagonist and have everyone be like, oh my god, I love this dude. Like Shinji from Evangelion and Yukiteru from Future Diary, the ultimate bitch protagonists. They're scared of everything. And you know what? At least we get to see them grow. We get to see them go from a little bitch to someone way cooler. Spoilers, I lied to you. That doesn't happen. He sort of mans up at certain points, and then he's just, you know, sitting in a urinal the next episode waiting for the world to blow up. God, these guys are are annoying. Anyway, these are all the noob category of protagonists. And this is the part that, like, I'm happy for you to focus on because, you know, I'm always super excited to have people get really upset by my takes. Upsetting people with my takes is one of the reasons why I have takes. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's not the truth, I don't know what is. But yeah, that's the noob category. And before getting into the meat and potatoes of this probably demonetized video, I would like to take this moment to thank this video's sponsor, Raycon earbuds. For those of you that don't know, Raycon makes amazing, affordable earbuds. Dangly wires that get caught on everything is a thing of the past. We are now in the future. Just a tad away from lightsabers. Man, am I excited for lightsabers for, you know, meat carving purposes only. But Raycon is one step there. Well, not to lightsabers, but to the future. I use Raycon earbuds pretty much every day. They have amazing battery life, and they have a self-charging case that while it's in the case, they charge, and you can then put it in your ears again, and you have like 24 hours of battery time without even needing to plug it in to the wall at all. Me personally, I probably only need to plug my Raycons in once a month because the charging case does such a great time, and I use them for probably like an hour a day. That's just my personal experience. They look amazing. They're as good as any other leading brand of earbuds, except they're actually affordable, unlike, well, I mean, let's not talk about that. And if you go to buyraycon.com/nux or click the link in the description, you could get yourself 15% off an already great deal. Thank you once again, Raycon. Mucho gracias. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you, and I'm honored to be able to work with a company that I genuinely love and use your product so much. And back to the video. Moving on to the pro category of protagonists. You see, these are all good protagonists, the ones that I'm about to mention, but they follow very, very strict guidelines. They don't blow the envelope away. They're all good protagonists, but that's only as a protagonist. It doesn't make them an unbelievable character altogether. It's just doing what they can with the tools at their disposal. An obvious example for something like this is character development. Character development is something that's extremely important, and having a character that you can understand how they got from point A in episode 1 to point Z in the final episode, and seeing all the mental twists and turns that crafted and changed the character from the beginning to that point, that character development is, I personally think, crucial to every protagonist. So if a protagonist actually does that really well, that puts them in the pro category, because at the end of the day, it is necessary when it comes to building a protagonist. Examples of this that I could think of off the top of my head, easy ones: Hinata from Haikyuu, Meliodas from Seven Deadly Sins. The dude goes from this gleeful person that can't accept his emotions to a character that begins to turn to his friends and starts to overcome his suffering. How we see how he broke, how he quelled his feelings down, how he eventually learned to accept them and accept loss. Someone like Shinichi from Parasite, I think he is the ideal character development. He starts off as a human dude that's kind of a bitch, and I thought he was gonna end up in the noob pussy category, but then it turned out he was genetically altered, and you see how that impacts him psychologically and how he changes as a person throughout the entire series. That's great. Someone like Mob from Mob Psycho, I love the dude to death. Definitely in the pro category, because this dude goes from point A to Z and we see it. He starts off as a guy that's stuck in his shell, but through meeting people like Reagan, like meeting people like the Body Improvement Club, he begins to change himself. He evolves as a person, and we begin to see him do that in every step. Someone like Yusuke, the main character of Yu Yu Hakusho, who in episode 1 is a selfish bully, but through his friends, through his journey, he develops a reason to fight. He becomes a completely different character by the end of the series, despite the fact that he acts similar. His mental state is entirely different. He goes from someone who's unhappy with his present self to someone who's happy with his present self. That is the ultimate growth. So all characters like this that just have amazing character development in themselves, they fall into the pro category. They don't necessarily shred the envelope, as I've mentioned. They don't push things even further beyond. That wasn't a reference to Goku being a god tier protagonist, by the way. Just, you know, just make sure that's clear. I don't want that taken out of context or anything. I don't want people to be like, wait a second, is Nux actually like Goku? No. Okay, he's aight. But no. Now, there's another type of very important baselines when it comes to a protagonist. Many stories focus, instead of on characters, it focuses more on the world. The setting is extremely important, and in order to really understand the setting, it's seeing how the setting affects the different characters that inhabit said setting. For example, the world building in Hunter x Hunter is fantastic, and you see that this psychologically traumatizing world, especially in the Chimera Ant arc, completely changes Gon's character. From the beginning of the Chimera Ant arc to the end of the Chimera Ant arc, we see an entire freaking calculus graph of Gon's personality changing. That's just an amazing way to talk about how great the world building actually is. The world building working is so good, we see how the world affects the characters and how it changes and morphs the characters into different beings purely due to the setting. Now, this won't necessarily get me to put the protagonist in the god tier, but I'll definitely put it in the pro category because that's something that's crucial when it comes to a protagonist. For example, I think Goblin Slayer is an okay anime. It didn't blow my mind by any means, but I do think that the Goblin Slayer, the protagonist, is a pro tier protagonist. How the world changed this dude, how goblins are these disgusting, horrible, abhorrent creatures, and the terrible acts that they do, and how that turned Goblin Slayer into the Goblin Slayer we know. Another great example of this is from an anime that's currently airing, Subaru from ReZero. Based on the conditions he has from his ability to return by death, how every time he traumatically dies, he comes back to life, where no one's allowed to know about this power of his, and it drives him mad. That's everything you could want as a baseline for a good protagonist. So this is the product of the world category, how the world morphs a character. And we've discussed personalized growth in a protagonist, such as basic character development, and I think these are requirements to a good protagonist, which is why now we get to move on to the god tier category. The god tier category does not have groups. You've noticed in the noob tier, I've had the normie group like Naruto, Asta, and Goku or whatever. I had the self-insert group like Kirito and Issei and Yugi and Sung Jin Woo from Solo Leveling as another example. I had the moral Jesus category like Deku, Jonathan Joestar, Shiro Emiya, etc. The pro category has every protagonist that serves the purpose of the baseline of what a protagonist needs to be. These are pro, wait for it, protagonists. I had to do that at least once in this episode, I'm sorry. So I'm not gonna give them brownie points for fulfilling the bargain basement amount of things that they actually have to do. The brownie points go to the characters that don't fit into a certain group of requirements, but are the group of requirements. Examples of god tier protagonists in anime and manga. The first ones to always pop in my mind are Lelouch from Code Geass and Light Yagami from Death Note. Two fantastically written characters. They have the character development. They have how the world and the setting changes them throughout the entire thing. But they're also extremely niche and individually crafted characters, each with their own incredible philosophies and psychologies where you can get in their head and try to see things from their perspective. Lelouch and Light are always the first to pop into my head because as far as anime protagonists go, these two absolute brainiacs are everything you could want in a protagonist. In fact, another way to know that they are god tier protagonists is because the entire series that they're in would fall apart without them. For example, if you look at most anime, the protagonist is almost unnecessary to the greater story. You can still have an appreciation for the story if the protagonist was not present. Naruto without Naruto, it would probably be better. My favorite arcs in Naruto were the arcs where Naruto wasn't around. And that's just as an example, but it's like that for so many stories. My favorite arcs in My Hero Academia are the ones without Deku. But when the entire story is standing upon the shoulders of the protagonist and all the twists and turns are because you get into the protagonist's head and see how he thinks, boom, that is a god tier protagonist. God damn. There is another anime protagonist that recently joined these ranks, and that would be Eren Yeager from the Attack on Titan manga. Because this dude goes from what I would consider a noob protagonist in season 1 to an easy god tier protagonist in the final season, where I think that the current manga arc is legit being held on the shoulders of Eren and how fantastic of a character he became. But no spoilers, never fear. Now, as far as stories like isekai anime, you have so many examples of funny protagonists. If it's a horror-based isekai like ReZero, you have someone like Subaru. If it's a comedy-based isekai like Overly Cautious Hero, you have someone like the Overly Cautious Hero who's hilarious. But I genuinely do believe that Kazuma from Konosuba is a god tier protagonist. He's so good. Aside from being funny, he is the most realistic isekai protagonist I've ever seen. He's quirky. He has a personality. He's not a self-insert. He's funny. He's horny on main. He's an advocate of true gender equality. You can start to get in his head and predict things that he's going to do based on his persona alone, not based on a trope. How he makes friends, how he loses friends, how he gets framed and how he frames. He's not a good guy. He's just a guy trying to get by. And I love that. He's not overpowered, but he's the protagonist. A lot of the amazing fights he ends up winning falls down to sheer dumb luck and a great meme. I love Kazuma. And as far as comedic protagonists go, I think that Saitama holds the belt as the king in this category, and he is also a god tier protagonist. Aside from having character development, which he does throughout the story most mostly in the manga, he's really here for a completely different reason. He's a subversion of everything you know in a protagonist, but he makes it work. Aside from being completely hilarious, he also manages to tell an incredibly deep psychological story. He's a guy who could never accomplish his dream. He's a man that, despite being completely hilarious and overpowered by every conventional usage of the term, he is a man that's suffering. And the story is telling two stories simultaneously. On the one hand, you have monsters trying to destroy the planet or whatever, and how will the planet survive? You have Saitama to save the day. And on the other hand, you have Saitama's perspective, which completely veers the entire story forward. Every event that takes place that we perceive as a threat from the perspective of every character immediately becomes a meme from the perspective of Saitama, the One Punch Man. He alone changes our view of every single event that takes place in the story's timeline, and that cannot be forgotten. Obviously, there are a lot of god tier protagonists, and this isn't just a list of my top 10 anime protagonists. But as simple examples of some, Spike from Cowboy Bebop, especially his finale, Kiritsugu Emiya from Fate Zero, going from the ultimate Machiavellian character to the complete opposite of that by the end of the story, Guts from Berserk, who doesn't fill the role of the hero, but instead fills the role of a demon fighting against not necessarily all these hordes of monsters attacking them, but struggling against destiny itself, how he's fated for a certain demise, but he will not stop fighting and struggling against it. Someone like Dio from JoJo's, who's obviously the protagonist, okay? He was around in part 1, he caused the events of part 2, he's around in part 3, he caused the events of part 4, his son's the main dude in part 5, he's around in part 6, he's around in part 7, I'm sure he'll still show up in part 8, was a meme I made before, but then he actually showed up, so I mean, hey, it looks like I'm a prophet. Dio's obviously the protagonist of JoJo's, okay? And the reason why he's so great is because people don't realize that he is a protagonist. Okay, he's really great because he kicks dogs, and as an advocate of kicking anime dogs, okay, I'm not gonna whiz one. I think I'm just gonna end off with one final god tier protagonist in my opinion. And I know a lot of people are gonna hate me for this one, which is why I saved this one for last, because when it comes to talking about people like Guts or Saitama or Eren or Lelouch, everyone's gonna agree. People are gonna be like, all right, I can let you go on one. Luffy from One Piece is a god tier protagonist. One Piece is a political story. It's also hilarious and Luffy's funny, but trying to explain the story of One Piece to someone else, you will end up talking politics for the majority of the time. And when it comes to politics, I have a basic philosophy. Any extreme is wrong. Fact. Period. The end. I don't want to hear any of this. You're far right, you're an asshole. You're far left, you're an asshole. There needs to be some sort of balance. I don't want to hear any of it. Now, when it comes to One Piece, you have extremists all around. Akainu is an extremist, an authoritarian monster. And you have Blackbeard, another extremist, an anarchist monster. And you have so many different characters and different political and philosophical themes flying around when Luffy is the dead center. Luffy is a man that believes in fighting for justice, like Akainu, but he's a man that believes in freedom, like Blackbeard. The reason why he's so amazing as far as protagonists go is because he is the perfect counter to every force in the One Piece world. He's not a product of the world per se. He's his own person that follows his own moral code. And I don't want to make this a whole massive Luffy video. I just wanted to do this because I know people in the comments are going to be upset. Oh my god, you put Luffy in God tier and you put Naruto in noob tier. Yes, I did. And you know what? I have a solution for you if you're upset. It's easy. All you gotta do is lean a little bit forward and suck your own dick. Have yourself a most wonderful evening. Like and subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this. And remember to stay weird, fam.